Naturopolis is the best Obelisk game yet, and let me tell you why. In 2018, when Button Shy released what has become by far their most popular game, Sprawlopolis, it really took the compact, wallet-sized game world by storm. This simple yet complex game where you're playing out different cards to form this big city, to fulfill certain scoring conditions and managing roads. It just provides the perfect balance, I think, of challenge and satisfaction in a nice compact package. It has just become synonymous with wallet games. And now, 2023, a few years later, we have a couple of different iterations of Sprawlopolis. In 2021, we had the release of Agropolis, which had more of a kind of agricultural farmy theme to it. And now in 2023, we are getting the full release of the latest, and in my opinion, best iteration of the Opolis series, Naturopolis. So if you're unfamiliar and the word Opolis means nothing to you, let me give you a quick overview of how the game plays, and I'll also highlight the differences between the other two games for any returning Opolis players. So you're going to see it comes in the kind of signature Button Shy wallet game holder in this nice green color, very evocative of the nature feel that the game has. So inside that wallet, you're going to have 18 cards. You're going to see all of these cards look a little bit different, but also share some similar colors. So each of these cards are all made up of the same 4 different types of blocks. There's these green forests, these blue lakes, these pink meadows, and these gray mountains. In addition to that, each of these cards is going to have a couple of different features. For example, every card is going to have a campsite. It could be in one of these three different locations. You're going to see a road, which is kind of a signature feature of all the Obelisk games. And then you're going to have rivers, which is a new card element to Naturopolis. So at the start of the game, you're going to take these 18 cards and shuffle them. And you'll notice that on the back of these cards, there are a whole bunch of different scoring conditions. Because at the start of the game, you're going to take 3 of these cards, flip them over, and these are essentially going to be your scoring conditions for this game. So that's a nice bit of variability you get in the game, is that those 3 different cards are going to be different every time you play. So there's hundreds of kind of combinations depending on which you draw. Let's take one of these for example. So this is what a scoring card looks like. You have kind of the flavorful text of it. Here you have the actual conditions of how you score it, and then usually a little diagram that gives you an example of how it's scored, and then this little number that's in a flower up here is kind of the scoring target for that card. And so the way you determine kind of your goal for the game is adding up each of these scoring targets. So here you have 14, 12, and 5, adding those up together, and then that total is the amount of points you are trying to get in this game. So once you have your 3 scoring conditions, you take the rest of the deck, shuffle it up, and then you're going to take 3 cards if you're playing solo like I usually play, and those 3 cards are essentially your hand for the game, the cards that you can lay out on your Naturopolis grid. To start the board, you just take the top card of the deck, and that goes right there. At all times, you kind of have information of the 3 cards in your hand, and then the next card you're going to draw to kind of help you plan out. The rules for placement are pretty liberal, and that kind of adds to the fun of it and also the difficulty of cards being able to go in a whole bunch of different places. The kind of core rule of placing it is that you have to share at least one edge with the cards. You could not do this, for example, where they're diagonal, but you could put it here. You could not put it here, because another rule, this is new to Naturopolis, if anyone is familiar with the other 2 games, this river feature kind of interacts especially with roads. You can never have a river leading into a road directly like this. So you can't have cars driving themselves into rivers, fortunately. Outside of that, you can cover up features with other ones. You can either cover up cards entirely. So the kind of strategy of placing these cards in all different ways is really the main challenge and fun of the game, trying to place those cards in such a way to maximize the scoring conditions that you have. So on your turn, you're just going to be able to place one of these wherever you choose, and then you draw a new card, and that's going to continue on until you run through the entire deck, all 18 cards, at which point you will kind of build your little grid here that you will use to score each of these conditions. So once you finish playing those cards, the final scoring is looking at three cards. For example, this straight and narrow one, you would get 1 road per section in 1 straightaway. So the longest kind of straight length of highway you have, you get 1 point for each chunk of that. So that's kind of one thing you're going to want to think about if you have that card. In addition to those 3 scoring conditions, the other points that you're going to calculate are the biggest clusters of certain types of blocks. So the biggest group of pink, the biggest group of blue, so on and so forth. You're going to score each of those. For example, if I had my cards laid out like this is a pretty awful configuration, but just for the sake of example, I would score 2 points for green because this is the biggest group. I would score 3 points for blue as the biggest group, but then just 1 for mountains because I only have 1 of those. And then the big challenge is roads. So another big difference, if you're familiar with the other games, is usually every road gives you -1 points. However, in Naturopolis, every road is -2 points. And now that's balanced a little bit because you'll notice that some of these cards actually don't have roads. They just have kind of their river feature. And so it's a really interesting change from the other games where roads are sometimes like the most paramount thing you're thinking about because those negative points will really eat you up at the end of the game. So it's interesting that even though Naturopolis is a little more punishing with the roads, there's less of them to deal with. And I find that that lowers the difficulty personally after playing through a couple games. I find that this is the most forgiving of the 3 games. But that's kind of the core of Naturopolis, using these scoring cards, and at the end, scoring roads for negative points, and then those kind of groups of colors that you have. And you kind of just play through this deck, and your final score, if you can beat the 3 numbers on your scoring cards, that's a win. Quick note, if you are a veteran Obelisk player, I do really appreciate that they have little pink boxes to really let you know if you're just flipping through this, it really just points out what the primary differences are if you are just switching from one or the other. The 2 really just being the special condition of rivers not being able to be connected to roads, and then, as I mentioned before, subtracting 2 points instead of 1 point, like you do in the other 2. So nice little rulebook, very compact, and very easy to read through if you're already familiar with the game, just to get caught up to speed of what's different between Agropolis and Sprawlopolis. If you guys are enjoying the video, remember to like and subscribe. I love to have you guys around the channel and showing support for the video. I really appreciate it. And let me know in the comments below, what is your favorite button shy game? So why is Naturopolis my favorite of this trio of games? Well, for me, Naturopolis is by far the one I enjoy playing the most, the one I find the least stressful, and it's a weird conundrum, right? Agropolis and Sprawlopolis have almost gotten a reputation as being particularly difficult games. And they are. There's a lot to consider when you're placing these cards down to try to maximize those points and reaching those totals that you're trying to get to. I consider Agropolis especially very, very difficult. I still have a ton of challenge reaching minimum points in that game. Naturopolis kind of changes that dynamic a little bit, and I think a lot of that comes from the River Edition. So in Sprawlopolis, for example, every card is going to have at least 1 road, right? You're adding the potential of another -1 condition that you could be adding into your grid. However, some of the cards in Naturopolis have no roads. They just have big, like, swaths of river. And there's just something that takes a big load off when you have the ability to put a card on that doesn't count against you. You kind of have a lot more freedom to place those river cards where you see fit, of course obeying, placement conditions, but you're not worried about adding another negative penalty. So while the roads in Naturopolis are more heavily penalized, I find that there's not as much stress because there's much less of them in the game. The other thing is just the scoring cards I just find very enjoyable in this game. I think the campsites are a very, very interesting addition, and I like them more than the animal pens that were added in Agropolis. So I think it overall just makes for a very welcoming package. I think if you're new to the Obelisk series and you've wanted to try them before, I think that Naturopolis is easily the one to go with if you just want a kind of more peaceful game. These games are not exactly the most thematic, but I find that making large kind of natural green areas is very, very enjoyable. That contrasts to Sprawlopolis, where you're making this huge metropolitan area with tons of roads, a lot of industrial zones. There's something I enjoy just a little bit more about making this very nice, serene, natural landscape. but that's going to be up to your own preference. I think if you're looking for, again, an introductory level Obelisk game, and one if you're looking for a lower stress, maybe you don't like how hard it is to get points in Sprawlopolis, I think Naturopolis is a great fit for that, and personally my favorite. If you're looking for more of a challenge, I think Agropolis is the way to go. There's even an advanced way to play in that game to make it even more challenging. So it really just depends on kind of what you're in the mood for. I'll give you a quick hint. I'm going to have another video soon for Combo Obelisk, which lets you mix and match different elements, and is actually my personal favorite way to play right now. But if I'm looking for a solo experience of just one of the Obelisk games, Naturopolis is now my new favorite and my current go-to, and I think it might be a good fit for you. Let me know in the comments below, what is your favorite Obelisk game out of the trio, and if you think I'm totally wrong about Naturopolis, be sure to let me know and why your Sprawlopolis or Agropolis is your favorite. Thank you guys again for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing for more videos like this. I also have a Twitter and Instagram where I post thoughts and photos of games I'm playing throughout the week, and I hope to see you there. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.